Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Cup of Jonah. I hope you are all doing very well. So, for whatever reason, my Twitter's still giving trouble. So we have a little workaround where I can actually get the post from others and then share it. So, for those of you who made it here, it's now on the timeline. But we'll get this resolved. I'll probably have to sign out of the Twitter or something. But at least we're running smooth right now. So I love it. Okay, so today we continue to look at the different attributes of God. Today we're going to ask whether or not there's matter. You know, matter is the stuff that something is made out of, the physicality of it. So we as human beings are form and matter. As physical beings, we're form and matter is our composition, our substance, or our like what makes us essentially to be us. What you could literally describe by definition includes matter in it, but it also includes the form. Why does it matter? See what I did there? That's so funny, Ted. That's the exact joke that went through my head as well. Morning, Shiva. Morning, everybody. Okay. So that there is no matter in God. We'll look later. Is there no composition? Again, so we're kind of, by way of remotion, remember, we're cutting away imperfections. We're like, okay, well, what about this? Okay. So we said that there's no time in God, so he's eternal. 2 days ago. Yesterday we said there's no passive potency in God. That is, there is no ability to be changed. That's what potency is, passive potency. And now we say there is no matter. Why is that asserted? From this, chapter 17, that there is no matter in God. From this, it is likewise evident that God is not matter. Whatever matter is, it is in potency. Furthermore, matter, is not a principle of acting. That is why, according to Aristotle, the efficient cause and matter do not coincide. The efficient cause, remember, that's what gets something done. That's when one being acts for on another. What makes a thing to be what it is, that's the efficient cause. There's 4 causes that factor into, if you can describe the 4 causes of something, you have Aristotle would call it a perfect definition. If you can, the 4 causes are matter, form, efficient, and final cause. So matter, the stuffs, the form, the agent, or efficient cause, and then it's always also called the final cause. The final cause, or the end, it's also referred to as the end, the purpose, right? Moreover, for those who reduced all things to matter as to the first cause, it follows that natural things exist by chance. Aristotle argues against these thinkers in Physics, Book 2. Hence, if God, who is the first cause, is the material cause of things, it follows that all things exist by chance. Again, matter does not become the cause of something actual except by being altered and changed. But if, as we have proved, God is absolutely immobile, he cannot in any way be the cause of things according to the mode of matter. What he's referring to there is that there were some people around the time of Plato and Aristotle that said, hey, it's just all things are caused by matter. There's nothing spiritual, nothing beyond, nothing immaterial. And so they said that basically everything, I mean, which without much reflection, you could think that, because a lot of the things that we touch and see and sense are material. But it's not a very profound thought, Now, the Catholic faith professes this truth, namely, it asserts that God has created all things, not out of his own substance, but out of nothing. On this point, however, the madness of David of Dinant stands confounded. He dared to assert that God is the same as prime matter on the ground that if he were not, he would have to differ from it by some differences, and thus they would not be simple. For in the being that differs from another by a difference, the difference itself produces a composition. David's position was the result of ignorance. Now, before I read further, morning, Dead Game, thanks for the repost. Prime matter, we would kind of think of as something akin to ether, something that like was the foundation of all movable things. Prime matter is what the ancient Greeks conceptualized as, okay, so if when you take my matter and give it the form of me, right? Before it had the form of me, what was it? It was in potency, so to speak. It could have been anything. This matter, it was prime, so it doesn't have any form. So as long as, if you're talking about matter simply and purely, if you will, quote unquote, without any form, not coupled with a form or not, informed by a form, right? Then that's what the Greeks called prime matter. So the matter in its original state, if you will. This David of Dinant he's referring to, that his position was the result of ignorance. He did not know how to distinguish between difference and diversity. The different, as is determined in Metaphysics Book 10, is said relationally. For every different is different by something. Something is called diverse, however, absolutely from the fact that it is not the same. Difference, therefore, must be sought among those things that agree in something, for we must point to something in them according to which they differ. For example, two species agree in genus and must therefore be distinguished by differences. In other words, Ted, I said I never heard the term prime matter. You learn something new every day. It's so true. It's great. That's how I love studying these Greeks, because there's a lot of really subtle. And here now he's distinguishing. How cool is this? Between the word different and diverse. So what he's saying here is we call two things different. We'll take Ted and I as examples, right? Since we're both in the same genus, human being, then there are things that are different about us that make us unique, right? That distinguish us. And he's saying that that's different than the word diverse. In things that agree in nothing, we need to seek the whereby they differ. They are diverse by themselves. So immediately when you see a dog, you know it's diverse in the sense that they're using it. It's diverse. You would say that's more appropriate in this terminology to call that diverse from a man, whereas this or that man are different men. In the same way, opposite differences are distinguished from one another, for they do not share in the genus as a part of their essence, and therefore, since they are by themselves diverse, there is no need to ask by what they differ. In this way, too, God and prime matter are distinguished. One is pure act, the other is pure potency, and they agree in nothing. So if we would consider the variety between two things not in the same genus even as diverse, so there's no need to say, for example, Ted is a Floridian, I'm a Chicagoan originally. Those are differences. So, though we're both men, we're from different places. That's a difference that helps you distinguish between these two similar things. we're even both bearded. This is a similarity, so that wouldn't help. But whereas when two things are diverse, you don't need to kind of go into the particulars, right? For example, again, with dogs, you can talk about the different breeds. They're both in the same genus, both in the same species, even. So that you have to ask, okay, well, what makes a Cocker Spaniel different than a Dalmatian, for example, right? You can start to talk about characteristics of the thing, but you don't need to get into the characteristics to distinguish and to observe the diversity of a bird from a dog, regardless of the species of dog, right? So this is what they're applying a different word so that we're clear about the level of the level of differences, quote unquote, right? How different are they? Are they so different we can call them diverse, and we don't need to call on particulars in order to distinguish between them? So the reason why that consideration is important is here he's saying that God and prime matter they're diverse. They're so different we don't need to talk about different characteristics as to how they're just different, of the different kinds of the same thing, so to speak, right? So you'll see that a lot, where to make sure that we're talking about the same things, Aristotle and Thomas and a lot of the great philosophers will drill down into particular definitions to make sure we're talking about the same thing. You know, you and I might have actually used those words or not even known the difference or recognized or use those same words in the same way that he's using them in this argument, which is why it's so important between that's that scholastic adage up in my profile there: seldom affirm, never deny, always distinguish. So part of when we're talking about some of these more nuanced terms and ideas, we need to get on the same page in terms of the subtleties and of the definitions or the possible definitions of the different words we're using, right? So even just that word that we've seen a few times now, accident, we distinguish between the meanings. It can either mean something out of my intention. Oops, I spilt my coffee. That was an accident. That was outside of my intention. I didn't intend to throw the coffee on the floor, right? As opposed to the meaning of the word accident meaning outside of the substance of something, right? Outside of the what it is of something, right? Which we talked about, right? So this is where always distinguishing is so essential, because that's how we can truly communicate as human beings who can't directly transmit information to each other telepathically. Well, maybe some of you can, I don't know. I don't mean to jump to any conclusions here. But so that's why that's such a important principle and the further on we get in this book, as we start to talk about more nuanced ideas, and again, when we're talking about something that's so high above our understanding, our ability to just comprehend, so much bigger than us, we need to be very, very careful. We need to be very careful in how we're using words and what exactly we mean by them so that we can avoid error. And if you remember from one of the first couple of Jonah episodes, I mentioned that Thomas has this beautiful work called On Being in Essence, where he talks about a lot of these things. And the very first line is one of my favorites that he's ever written. He said, a small error in the beginning will result in a great error in the end when we're thinking about or addressing a topic or talking about something. So this is why he's so heavy on, appropriately so focused on making sure we're talking about the precise meaning of what we're saying is so important. So I love it. So tomorrow we're going to look as to see whether or not there's composition in God, and then whether or not there's anything violent or unnatural in God is the day after, and then whether or not there's God is a body. So it's interesting. We're going to see. We're going to keep progressing kind of through and start to look at more and more precisely different characteristics, or we're going to try to continue removing those imperfections of our experience of beings, right? Most beings that we know and have contact with and experience do have composition, right? What happens when take a dog again as an example? What happens when a dog dies? Its soul, it's different. There's 3 different kinds of soul that Aristotle lays out in De Anima. I believe it's De Anima. It might be the Physics. No, I think it's De Anima. But anyways, his treatment, he talks about there's 3 kinds of soul. The vegetative soul, that is the soul that plants have. The animal soul, which is what animals have. So when a dog dies, for example, that's a composition. Its soul and body are now separate. We know that the soul, it's not alive anymore. What changed? The soul's not there anymore. That dog's soul is gone. And then, of course, the same thing with humans. We see that soul leaves. What's interesting is that those remember the principle we touched on earlier, where there's distinction, there's hierarchy. So where 2 things are not the same, there's one thing that's more noble than the other, or that's effectively more excellent, you could say. So you have these hierarchy of souls. You have the vegetative souls are the lowest, animal souls come after that, and human souls come above that, the rational souls, rational animals. But what's interesting about that is that each of the higher order have the powers of the lower souls in that hierarchy. So, for example, plants take in nutrition, and they grow and they reproduce. Animals do the same thing. They take in nutrition, they grow and develop, and they reproduce. They also can freely move themselves around. They also have emotions. Now, we take in nutrition, we grow, we reproduce. That's the powers of the vegetative soul. We are in us. Powers of the animal soul, we can move around. We have emotions. But we also have rational thought. So we have, in the power of the human soul, is the animalistic power, the powers of the animal soul, and the powers of the vegetative soul. So it's really cool, this hierarchy of power, or you could even say nobility of the soul. And so it's really fascinating. What's also interesting is, this is a little tangent here, but I think it's a delightful thought, is the highest in one order is very similar to the lowest in the next. So, for example, the most noble animal, it has a lot of features that are more similar to men. So there are some animals that seem, that have opposable thumbs. They seem like they have it seems like they're touching on rational thought. So obviously, like apes, for example, they're very similar to humans in a lot of ways. And then on the other end, the lowest animals seem almost like plants. Like what is a sponge, right? Is that actually, when you look into what its powers are, it kind of seems to have locomotion. It seems like it can move. I don't know about emotion, but So you can see some plants can actually move somehow from where they are. And some animals, so there's like that gray area, right? Like, which actually is this, in which order? So kind of a little pet project that I've wanted to do for a long time, and I've started kind of the framework of it, is to actually put all of the animals and plants and humans in a spectrum, just where you have like them all kind of in a neat little row of most noble to least noble, all the way up to humans. And actually, if you look at some of the most noble humans, I mean, some of them, we know some people like this, where they have, because the next order of being above us are animals without, are human being. I mean, I'm sorry, not animals, intellects without a body, angels, right? So these angels, the lowest of angels, is more similar to humans without matter in their intelligence, for example. The most intelligent men, oftentimes, we all know that there are those brilliant people who kind of are frail of like, they're not meant for manual labor. They're not meant for, like, they can't handle it. Their physical composition can't handle it. There's almost like this angelic gentleness or lightness to how they carry themselves, and there's almost this otherworldly, sometimes a glow, sometimes just a really sharp intellect. And so you can kind of see, obviously, you're talking about matter or no matter. That's a huge thing. So apparently it does matter, Ted. but so that's an interesting concept that I've always loved to kind of toy with, and we kind of experience that. There are some characteristics that different humans have that kind of approximate them more to the angels, and others that approximate them more to the beasts, so to speak. So very fascinating stuff. But yeah, that whole organizing of the animal kingdom in that hierarchy would be wonderful to do. And what a fun what a beautiful research that would be. Because you'd have to figure out, okay, well, do insects have emotion? Where do they fit in this whole thing, right? Just a lot of fun little side reflections that I think, see, this is science. What, it would be so beautiful if the scientific world at large today would actually like apply real rational thought and scientific principles to the world around us like they used to do. Because our knowledge, our access to knowledge and information with the technology we have now far surpasses what Aristotle had. One of my favorite little stories, yeah, Dad Game, exactly. Angelic through full feral, right? Speaking of humans. But what's really beautiful is, what was I saying about the array of creatures? Anyways, it'll come back to me. But there was another little principle that's yeah, about Aristotle. That's right. One of my favorite little historical things about Aristotle is part of the reason why his science in physics, where he looks at a lot of the created world around us, and then De Anima, where he talks about different souls in different animals and plants, is he mentored none other than Alexander the Great. So Alexander the Great, most people don't know this, but as he went around and conquered the world, the known world at the time, he was sending specimens of new species that he found and new plants and animals that he found, sending them back to Aristotle. So Aristotle has like extensive research that he wrote about of his autopsies and examinations of different animals from around the world. So he had a very unique and beautiful perspective at that time when travel wasn't so easy compared to today, for sure. So he had access to so much more information than a lot of the other ancients, which was how he was able to kind of avoid some of the pitfalls or the errors. And he had such a better understanding of the array of animals and creatures on Earth. Anyways, beautiful, beautiful. So now with so much more access to information even than Aristotle had back in the day, our science should be so much more developed. In a lot of ways it is. If you look at the animal kingdoms, I mean, it's incredible. The amount of information available to us. How wonderful would it be to apply rigorous examination in a profound philosophical sense, rather than just looking at all of these things from a chemical or, grossly illogical evolutionary perspective that modern and postmodern scientists claim or tend to do. So anyways, maybe that's a little pet project. If people want to work on that with me, maybe that's something that we'll undertake at some point, to look at the animal kingdom and kind of set it up, put it all together. I don't know, just spitballing here. All right, well, that's all for today. Went a little longer with all the technical difficulties yesterday. It's nice to have you all here. I know yesterday was probably a little difficult to find the stream, so thank goodness we got that partially resolved. Still trying to work out the Twitter issue because my posts aren't showing up until I get them from somebody else to retweet them. But anyways, all that aside, don't forget, check out phoneboothpodcast.substack.com for the whole array, not diverse podcasts, different podcasts. So check those guys out. And then also you can find the Cup of Jonah on Spotify and on YouTube. Don't forget, Saturday, day after tomorrow already, we're almost done with this week already, is of course the live stream which we're now doing. The phone booth live stream is now at 7 p.m. EST. So join us for that. But before, of course, we have our reading tomorrow, which, just as a refresher here, that we're going to be talking about that there is no composition in God. So, we talk about that composition of matter and form. We can talk about the composition of being in essence and all kinds of other fun stuff. So thank you for joining me this morning. I hope you enjoyed your cup of Jonah. And I will see you all tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.